Power is fragile. It gleams like gold in the sun, dazzling all who behold it, but it can shatter in a heartbeat, broken by a dagger's thrust, a poisoned cup, or the hand of treason. Throughout history, assassinations have been the blood-soaked punctuation mark at the end of greatness, moments where empires shifted, dynasties crumbled, and legends were written in crimson ink. In this video, we descend into that world of violence and treachery, where kings, philosophers, generals, and emperors met their end not on battlefields, but in the hands of those closest to them. These are not simply deaths, they are spectacles of human cruelty and ambition, the scars of which still shape the story of our world. These are the 8 most brutal assassinations of the ancient past. The last one will shock you. Philip II of Macedon, murdered at his daughter's wedding. Long before Alexander the Great carved his empire across the world, there was Philip II, his father, the architect of the Macedonian power. Philip was a king of ruthless vision and the unifier of Greece under Macedonian rule, but kings are never without enemies. It was a day of celebration. Philip's daughter Cleopatra was being wed. This Cleopatra was Philip's daughter, Cleopatra of Macedon, Alexander the Great's sister. The palace was filled with music, laughter, and the promise of unity. Crowds gathered to witness the royal procession. Philip strode proudly into the theater, draped in royal robes, his bodyguard close behind. And then, in the very moment meant to symbolize his dynasty triumph, the knife flashed. Pausanias, a member of Philip's own bodyguard, lunged forward and drove a blade into the king. Gasps shook the hall as Philip staggered, crimson spilling into the ground. Why did Pausanias do that? Some said revenge for a personal humiliation. Others said that Queen Olympias, Philip's wife, and even young Alexander himself had conspired to rid themselves of the king. Whatever the truth, the murder was swift and shocking. Philip's corpse lay broken at a wedding meant to unify his house. In that moment, the world pivoted. His boy Alexander, just 20 years old, became king. And within a decade, the earth itself would tremble beneath his campaigns. The blade that struck Philip II did not just end a man, it unleashed Alexander the Great upon history. Sogdianos of Persia, poison and betrayal. Power in ancient Persia was fragile, more a target than a reward. Sogdianos, who had seized the throne by murdering his half-brother, tasted the bitterness of ambition almost immediately. His rise was violent, his fall would be even more so. Rival factions in the palace despised him. His rule lasted only months, a fleeting shadow of authority. Then the conspirators struck. They chained him in a dark chamber, isolated from guards and allies. In front of him, a cup appeared, a seemingly simple drink, but it carried death within. Sogdianos drank, thinking it a gesture of reconciliation or trust. The poison coursed through his vein, burning, paralyzing, ending life with cruel swiftness. He struggled, screamed, but the chains held him, and no one came to save him. Within hours, the king who had killed to ascend the throne lay lifeless, betrayed by those he should have commanded. With his death, the Persian throne shifted yet again, a grim reminder that in the world of kings, power is never secure, and betrayal often wears the mask of loyalty. Julius Caesar, stabbed by his friends. On the Ides of March, Julius Caesar, dictator of Rome, was assassinated by a group of senators he trusted, including his close ally, Brutus. Surrounded in the Senate chamber, Caesar was stabbed 23 times, his death marking both a personal betrayal and the collapse of the Roman Republic, paving the way for the rise of the Roman Empire. Watch the video linked above for the full story. Caligula, the emperor stabbed by his guards. Rome has known cruel rulers, but none more infamous than Caligula. At first, beloved for ending the tyranny of Tiberius, he descended swiftly into madness and excess. He declared himself a living god, squandered wealth, and committed acts so depraved that even Rome shuddered in horror. The Praetorian Guard, once his protectors, began to plot. The Senate fumed. The people trembled, and in January of 41 CE, the moment came. Caligula emerged from the theater, flanked by attendants. Suddenly, the guards turned on him. Blades flashed, stabbing again and again, over 30 wounds ripping through the emperor's body. The emperor, who had demanded worship as a god, now lay lifeless, carved to pieces by his own soldiers. Rome rejoiced, but the blood in the corridors of the palace was only a prelude to darker times, for assassinations of emperors would soon become a Roman tradition. Hypatia of Alexandria, the philosopher torn apart. Not all assassinations are of kings or generals. Some are of thinkers, souls whose ideas threaten power more than any sword. In Alexandria, the great city of learning, lived Hypatia, philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer. A woman of brilliance in a world dominated by men, she became a symbol of reason, knowledge, and pagan tradition in an age where Christianity was rising with fury. But brilliance invites envy, and knowledge, when it threatens dogma, breeds hate. Hypatia's presence became unbearable to Bishop Cyril of Alexandria, whose followers believed her influence prevented reconciliation between political and religious factions. Murmurs became accusations. Accusations became rage. One day, as her chariot rolled through the city, a Christian mob dragged her from it. They stripped her, dragged her through the streets, and inside the church, they began their work. Using sharpened tiles, her remains were burned, as if fire could raise the power of her mind. This was no mere murder, it was an execution of knowledge itself. Hypatia became a martyr for philosophy, her death marking a dark chapter in the struggle between reason and fanaticism. Alexandria's libraries would one day burn, but the flames began with her blood. Commodus, strangled in the bath. The son of Marcus Aurelius, Commodus inherited the throne of Rome and the envy of the world. But where his father had been a philosopher king, Commodus was a tyrant, drunk on power and spectacle. He fancied himself Hercules reborn, striding into gladiatorial arenas, fighting beasts and men alike. But his reign was a nightmare. He bankrupted Rome, alienated the Senate, and terrified his court. Soon, plots swirled around him like vultures. On New Year's Eve, 192 CE, conspirators poisoned his wine. He drank, but the god emperor refused to die. Weakened but alive, he staggered into his bath. There, a wrestler named Narcissus was sent in. He wrapped his powerful arms around the emperor's throat and squeezed until life slipped away. The mighty son of Marcus Aurelius, who styled himself as a god, drowned not in glory but in a strangler's grip. His murder marked the end of the Antonine dynasty and the beginning of Rome's long descent into turmoil. Edward II of England, the king who died in darkness. The medieval world was rife with treason, but few deaths matched the cruelty or the legend of Edward II of England. Edward was no great king. His reign was marked by military failures and political weakness. His affection for favorites, especially Piers Gaveston and later Hugh Despenser, alienated nobles and his queen, Isabella of France. She, alongside her lover Roger Mortimer, led a rebellion that dethroned Edward. The once mighty king was imprisoned in Berkeley Castle, but his enemies wanted more than his crown. They wanted his silence forever. On a cold night in 1327, assassins entered his chamber. To avoid leaving marks that could reveal murder, they restrained Edward and forced a red-hot poker into his body. The agony was unimaginable, the screams muffled by stone walls, the cruelty hidden from sight. Whether this method was truth or legend, the story itself captured the imagination of history. Edward's death was a warning. Kings could be unmade, not just on battlefields, but in the hidden rooms of castles, extinguished with fire and humiliation. In death, Edward II became a ghostly reminder of the brutality of power and how betrayal could burn far hotter than steel. William the Silent, the first gunshot of modern politics. By the 16th century, the age of daggers and swords gave way to a deadlier invention, the handgun, and the first major assassination with a firearm would shake Europe. William of Orange, called the Silent, was the leader of the Dutch revolt against Spanish rule. To the Catholic Spanish crown, he was a heretic and a rebel. To his people, he was the father of their independence. But such titles come with a price. King Philip II of Spain placed a bounty on William's head, calling for his death as divine justice. On July 10, 1584, in Delft, William walked through his residence when a man named Balthasar Gerard stepped forward. Hidden beneath his cloak was a pistol. In a flash, Gerard fired. Bullets tore into William, who collapsed, blood flowing across the floor. His final words were said to be a declaration of loyalty to his people and to God. His sister, Maria, was present and knelt beside him in horror as he collapsed. Gerard attempted to flee, but William's guards and servants quickly pursued and captured him, ensuring the assassination could not escape justice. Gerard was captured, but his fate was almost medieval in its brutality. He was tortured and executed in ways too horrific to imagine, yet the act itself could not be undone. The father of the Dutch nation was dead, and the weapon that killed him was a glimpse of the modern age to come, assassinations carried out not with blades or poison, but with the trigger of a gun. From the daggers of Rome to the fires of medieval castles, from mythic kings slain in their own baths to emperors strangled by their guards, history is painted in deception. Each assassination was more than a death. It was a turning point, a fracture in time where everything changed. Caesar's murder ended a republic. Philip's death unleashed Alexander. Hypatia's slaughter dimmed the light of knowledge. Caligula's fall showed the madness of unchecked power. Commodus' strangling ended a dynasty. Edward's fiery torment revealed the cruelty of politics. Sogdianus' poisoned cup marked the deadly fragility of kingship in ancient Persia, and William's gunshot ushered in a new age of political murder. These are the moments where history itself bled, and the remnants still linger in our world today. Watch the next video to learn more, and let us know in the comments below which historical story would you like us to tell next.